Hi guys! I hope everyone had a good solstice. My neighbors are lighting off fireworks because apparently it's the 4th of July even though it's June 30th. Can you guys believe that June is already almost over? Like, I can't hardly believe it myself. But, on to the meat of this video. This is going to be another Nightowl Ramble. Unfortunately, this is the second time I've had to record this, so I'm really hoping that I can be as articulate as I was last time, because let's face it, that's something I struggle with. So bear with me, guys. But what this is going to be about is basically what we are actually coming up on right now, which is the dark moon, and the differences that is between the new moon and what the dark moon actually represents in magic, and then kind of going into shadow work and how I have come about incorporating that into my practice. So first of all, the dark moon is when the moon is not visible in the sky. And I don't mean just because it's, it's rising or setting. I mean that it is not visible because of the phase that it is in. This is from my understanding and from what I have sort of absorbed so far of this concept. Because I always thought that that was the new moon, and then I learned that the new moon is actually when the moon has started to do a waxing crescent. So you'll see that little sliver of silver. And the intentions for the new moon are slightly different from the intentions of the dark moon. The new moon is generally new beginnings. You set your intention that you want to do in your craft if you work with the lunar cycles. And the dark moon is more of that time to embrace the shadow, or to heal the shadow, or to go into the shadow and work with the shadow. It has been a long belief of mine that the shadowy sides of us are great teachers, and we can learn so much from our shadow. But it can be scary, and it can be very hard to do, and it's something that is not, it's kind of an uphill thing, pretty much. So for the longest time I wanted to incorporate this into my practice. I have in a sense of a therapeutic way, in a sense of self-care, psychologically. I have been doing this for quite some time, but spiritually it still wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, and that was until recently, when I was actually having a conversation with Lisa from Boho Tarot about the and I will link her channel down below, about the Dark Goddess Tarot deck. This has actually become a very powerful tool for me, and I knew that she worked with it, so I was having a conversation with her about how exactly she did that. And what she had in store for me for her answers actually spawned off how I wanted to finally incorporate shadow work into my practice. And it was something that I became very excited about, because I have for the longest time been not sure exactly how I wanted to execute it, and this gave me the drive and that spark to discover exactly what I needed. So I have been, especially this year, really heavily into journaling everything. I've very much been in that introspective space where I need to put my thoughts down on paper. I need to have lists, I need to have plans, I need to have all this stuff, because it's just too hard to have it in my brain all the time, in my head. It wasn't working for me. It heightened my anxiety. I just couldn't do it. And I've always found that having that release, that dump where I just throw everything out on paper, has been very therapeutic for me. One of my favorite quick, easy magical things to do when I'm feeling stressed is to write it all down on paper and burn it. So, you know, I wanted to incorporate that even more because for me, psychologically, it's a very powerful tool. So I came up with starting to do a journal for shadow work. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I know many people recommend it. Ann Maddox actually has a wonderful free PDF on her website that is journal prompts for shadow work, and I plan on going through that and including it in this journal that I'm making. But what I'm going to do, I will show you guys. So I made this. This is just a black cheap dot grid journal that I got off of Amazon for $5. And then I got this idea from Dawn Michelle of Boho Tarot, which I will link her down below as well. She has decorated several of her journals. I'm sorry guys, it's allergy season and I am also an asthmatic, so she has decorated several of her journals with paint pens, and I thought that was a fantastic idea, so I decided to put the moon phases, and I also put this quote from Danielle Noel on the inside of the box in the Moonchild Tarot. There is this beautiful quote that says, "You are the dance of light and shadow," and I thought that was really fitting for something like this. So what I plan to do with this journal is, my cat is scratching my leg. No, go bug your daddy. What I plan to do with this journal is every month on the dark moon, I am going to draw a card from the Dark Goddess Tarot. And I am going to journal about that goddess, about her myths. I'm going to include photos and artwork that corresponds with this goddess, and then it's going to kind of go extensively into what I think the message is from that card or that goddess, the things that I might need to be focusing on for shadow work. So, and then kind of how it correlates with the dark moon. So the first few pages I intend on doing kind of collage work and general information of the dark moon and working with darker deities and things like that. And then kind of going into shadow work. And then once a month I will be doing that where I pull from the Dark Goddess Tarot and then I write about it in here. So it's going to have somewhat of an artistic medium because let's face it, it's me. I'm a very visual person, and I tend to connect deeper if I have those visual aspects. So, but most of this is going to be rather introspective, lots of writing and lots of healing work. But where I have been doing some research on this, which I actually had been throwing in my Book of Mirrors. So my Book of Mirrors is basically just a journal. That's my spiritual brain dump. So I will write everything in here, contemplations for spells, readings, all that stuff. And so I was kind of going through the dark moon and the shadow self and how they correlate with each other and all that earlier today. And I was also working with some books that I am actually going to share with you guys. But I want to preference first that these are not books that I have read cover to cover, so these will not be book reviews. These are books that I've kind of just been thumbing through and feeling around. So I can't go extensively into them, but I can tell you so far my experiences I've had with them while discussing this topic of the dark moon and shadow work and the Dark Goddess. The first two books, the titles actually sound really similar, just to warn you guys, but they are two different books. The first one is Mysteries of the Dark Moon, The Healing Power of the Dark Goddess, and this is by Demetra George. This one is really kind of more involving the divine feminine, which is where I wanted my shadow work to kind of go. I wanted it to have that touch of divine feminine, because I felt like that is where I'm going to get a lot of healing, is working with the divine feminine energy and incorporating the energy of the moon cycles as well as my own personal cycles, and kind of combining all of it into this healing journey. So the first part of this book has the dark moon, the dark goddess, and then a lunar history of the feminine. And then the second part goes into 3 different goddesses of the dark moon, Nyx, Medusa, and Lilith. And then the last section is basically just rites, rituals, and all that stuff that corresponds with the dark goddess and the dark moon. There's a lot of diagrams that kind of really dissect the cycles of the moon in many, many different ways, which I have also really enjoyed kind of peeking at. And I'm really curious to read this cover to cover. I think that it's going to be exceedingly beneficial. From what I have read so far, I have very much enjoyed this book. So this is on my plans to read cover to cover. I will be doing a book review on this one. The second one is Dark Moon Mysteries, and this one is by Timothy Roderick. This book is really kind of more working with the dark moon and shadow work, sort of more heavily focused on that versus having the divine feminine aspect in it. But it still is, I still find it very useful. And I'm really, if you guys have any other recommendations on books for shadow work, I would love to absolutely absorb them. But in this one it says, the first part is the meaning of darkness, naming the shadow, and then it kind of goes further into, you know, the different aspects, like the power to accept, the power to surrender, the power to wonder, the power to resonate. And yeah, like I said, this one has a lot to do with magical practice, myths, and kind of the dark moon and how it incorporates with the shadow. So there's that one. And then the last one is by an author who I actually greatly enjoyed, especially when I used to work with the Morgan as a deity. She had wrote a book that I had completely absorbed. Like, I had sticky notes all over this book, and I had wished that this type of book existed for every deity, but it doesn't, because that's how incredible that book was. It was called Celtic Lore and Spellcraft of the Dark Goddess. I recently passed it on because I no longer work with the Morgan, but I also noticed that the author, who is Stephanie Whitfield, has a book called Dark Goddess Craft. So I grabbed this one a few months back, I think. And again, this is more of that working with dark deities, kind of implementing the divine feminine into working with the shadow and that sort of thing. So it's got, it's kind of sectioned off by the process, basically, of shadow work. So it does a preference, the nature of dark gods, working with dark deities, cursing, warding, and other defensive magic, and the process of transformation, which is what will occur once you start to do shadow work. And so the second section is the descent, and it goes through deities that will help you with your descent into shadow. And then the challenge, and that's kind of the nitty-gritty of shadow work. And this is also listing deities that will help you with that. And then the rebirth, so once you kind of come out of that healing. And I've noticed that shadow work is very cyclic, like the moon phases. There's so many similarities between the two, and I am such a moon baby. I just felt that I wanted to incorporate the phases of the moon and have that sort of aspect of time to shadow work, because I was hoping that I could make it a regular thing. It could be something that I could constantly be chiseling away at, constantly be healing myself, constantly be on that journey where I can be working towards bettering myself and towards healing all of those little aspects, and hopefully digging deeper and finding more and uncovering more, and just kind of being the best version of myself so I can be the best version of all the other aspects of my life. You know, a wife, a mother, a pagan, a friend, a sister, you know. So, where's my load? So that is my hope for this, is that I am going to really start diving into shadow work in this weird esoteric way that I had found that I want to do it, which is kind of combining the dark moon phase, working with the Dark Goddess Tarot, and journaling about it in here. Now, this won't strictly be for working with the Dark Goddess Tarot. I will also be doing journal prompts in here, much like Ann Maddox's, and other things that are all related to shadow work. But this is my shadow journal. So, as I progress further in this, I might share some aspects of it with you guys. But as you know, shadow work is very personal. So there might be bits and pieces that might be sectioned off. But it is also, I'm hoping, going to be a artistic, therapeutic place that I can go and hope to heal in a lot of ways. So I just wanted to share this with you guys, and hope to maybe encourage you guys to have different ways of thinking about shadow work and how you might want to go about it, or how you have gone about it. Please feel free to share with me. Please feel free to share with me resources. If you have any books that you recommend, that you've read on this subject that you greatly enjoy. Hopefully the books I recommended, in a sense, were very beneficial to you guys. And if anybody else does a process kind of like this, like I had said that I know that Lisa from Supportive Tarot kind of does in her own way, please share it with me. I would love to talk with you guys more about this kind of stuff, because shadow work is tough, and sometimes you do kind of need support when you are going through those darker aspects of yourself. But the biggest thing that I have learned over such a long history of, you know, perfect example, depression and anxiety I've had since I was still a child in a lot of ways, is that owning our darkness is deeply important, and not fearing it, but really trying to understand it and use it as a teacher, a tool to help us learn and evolve, is something that's deeply important. And I feel like us as spiritual beings, that's just something that we need to be doing. Be it, of course, that this can be done however way works for you. This is the way that I found that I would like to experiment with. I just smacked my ring on the desk. This is not the first time I've done that in a video. But obviously, whatever works for you is what should be best for your healing journey. This is what's something that I'm doing personally for myself. But hey, if it resonates with you, I would love to talk to you about it. So that's all I've got for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry for my scatterbrainedness. My previous take on this video was just so much more articulate, and I was so disappointed when I did a sound check and it didn't record the audio. But such is life. Anyway, blessed be.